class. For my final paper, I chose to reflect on the intersection of gender difference and spirituality with practical application for ministry. My beginning words, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. It's a cheeky phrase many are familiar with, but when it comes to men, women, and the convergence of spirituality, it could be argued that men and women are on two different planets. In this assignment, I strove to provide practical insight for ministry while looking through the lens of a counseling and spiritual care approach. Delving into this complex topography, I found it necessary to recognize and appreciate the inherent characteristics distinguishing men and women in general before attending to a comparison of male and female spirituality. Author and psychologist John Gray asserts that men's sense of self is defined through his ability to achieve results, whereas a woman's sense of self is defined according to her feelings and the quality of her relationships. Though on a cultural level these may be easy labels to sustain, this writer would assert that given advancement in gender studies and the current landscape of gender debate, it seems this may be too simplistic an explanation. Still, it is worthy of note as a major influence in our cultural still, and a culture that is rife with gender issues and entrenched stereotypes. Trailblazing psychologists Eleanor Maccabee and Carol Jacqueline literally wrote the book on the psychology of sex differences. Researcher Jeanne H. Block comments on some of the challenges of this milieu in her article, Issues, Problems, and Pitfalls in Assessing Sex Differences, a critical review of the psychology of sex difference. Block acknowledges the comparison, or rather the comprehensive analysis that is taken on by the authors Maccabee and Jacqueline. Yet she points out how new data, different criteria, pervasive stereotypes, among a myriad of other challenges, are leading to an erosion in the evidence of sex differences over the past decade, raising questions both puzzling and profound. Another author, Janet S. Hyde, contends that males and females are similar on most, but not all psychological variables. Hyde asserts that gender is not only an individual difference or person variable, but also a stimulus variable, which supports why this is such a challenging milieu to dissect. It was also important for me to write on the idea of otherness. Looking through the lens of spiritual care requires a gracious and tentative approach, not only to the topic of gender, but toward the being of personhood and towards supporting people on their journey as Christ followers. In our textbook, I found some useful areas and authors to mine on pages 403 and 404. I also found an interesting online article entitled Women in Leadership, written by Sarah Curdy, which provides excellent statistics of women in ministry in leadership positions in the PAOC denomination, illuminating some of the barriers and impacts which in turn impact the whole, congregationally and societally. In an increasingly changing culture, it will be essential for the church to recognize that spirituality is a deeply personal way of making sense of life, rather than focusing on the contrast between male and female expression of spirituality. This writer would assert that in the process toward building meaning, one must also consider a very important piece in the process: encountering one another. As best-selling author Barbara Brown Taylor puts it, the wisdom of the Desert Fathers includes the wisdom that the hardest spiritual work in the world is to love the neighbor as the self, to encounter another human being not as someone you can use, change, fix, help, save, enroll, convince, or control, but simply as someone who can spring you from the prison of yourself if you will allow it.